Hey there. We're diving into a topic you've been wanting to explore more deeply, and it's one that often gets, well, maybe not enough attention.
Hmm.
We're talking about age-inappropriate interests and behaviors in autistic individuals.
Right.
And we've got this article from Cheap ABA titled, Understanding Age-Inappropriate Interests and Behaviors in Autistics.
Okay.
It jumps right in, connecting these behaviors to the core traits of autism.
Yeah.
Like, think about the need for routine.
Right.
Or how some autistic people, they don't pick up on those subtle social cues in the same way as neurotypical folks.
Uh-huh.
It's like their brains are, wired a bit differently.
It's fascinating, actually, because the article, it goes beyond just listing the traits, or it really tries to explain the why behind them.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Like, take rigidity, for example.
Okay,
It's often seen as just being stubborn, but it can be so much deeper than that.
right.
For some individuals, it's about this really intense anxiety that can come with unexpected changes, even small ones. Like their whole world is turned upside down.
That puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just a dislike of change, it's a deep need for that predictability, that structure.
Exactly. And that need for structure, it kind of ties into another core trait the article talks about.
Okay.
Perseverative behaviors.
Right.
We often think of these as those repetitive actions or routines.
Oh,
And those can sometimes seem, well, age inappropriate,
right.
but they can actually serve a very important purpose.
Interesting. I always thought of them as just being, well, repetitive,
Yeah.
but there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. For some, it's a way to self-regulate, like the world can be really overwhelming.
Right.
And those repetitive actions, they bring a sense of calm.
Okay, yeah.
For others, it's about finding that comfort in predictability when so much around them feels unpredictable.
That makes a lot of sense. The article also touches on how some autistic children, they might not naturally pick up on those social cues like neurotypical kids do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they miss out on those unwritten rules of how to, act in social situations.
Yes, and that goes back to what we were talking about brains being wired a bit differently.
Right.
There's this fascinating research on mirror neurons.
Okay.
And these neurons, they're thought to be involved in our ability to understand and then imitate other people's actions.
Interesting.
Some studies, they suggest that folks on the spectrum, they might have differences in how these mirror neurons work.
Huh.
And that could be why it's harder to pick up on those social cues or imitate social behavior.
So it's not a lack of wanting to connect.
Yeah.
It's how their brains are processing those interactions.
Exactly.
That is very insightful.
And this often gets mistaken for, emotional immaturity,
Right.
which the article thankfully addresses head on.
Yeah.
It's not that autistic people lack emotions. They experience them just as strongly,
Okay.
sometimes even more so.
Wow, yeah.
But the way they express and regulate those emotions, it can be different. And that can be misunderstood as being, well, younger than they are chronologically.
Okay, so we've got these internal factors, these core traits, right? Hardwired.
Yeah.
But the article goes a step further. It's not just about autism itself, but also about the person's environment.
Absolutely.
Like, their experiences play a huge role in shaping behavior.
For sure. It talks about how some individuals, they might have limited exposure to diverse peer groups,
Okay.
especially if they're in, say, specialized education settings.
Right, and while those settings are crucial for support, I can see how someone might miss out on those everyday social interactions.
Exactly.
The ones that teach us, like those unspoken rules.
Right, exactly. And those settings, while vital, the article stresses that balance is key.
Okay.
Providing that support, yes, but also creating those opportunities to interact with neurotypical peers.
It's like learning a new language, right?
Yes.
You can study all the grammar and vocabulary,
Right.
but you won't become fluent without actually having conversations with people.
Exactly. Social interaction, it's very similar. It needs that practice, the trial and error,
Yeah.
exposure to different social situations.
Right.
And what the article argues is that when we limit these opportunities, even with the best intentions, it could contribute to those age-inappropriate behaviors.
That's an eye-opening way to look at it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the individual, it's about building an environment that truly supports their growth.
Absolutely.
And the article talks about how even well-intentioned actions, like lowering expectations, can backfire.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not about thinking any less of someone's abilities.
Yeah.
It's about approaching their learning and development in a way that actually fits their needs. their strengths. And sometimes that means adjusting our expectations based on their unique profile,
Right.
not on some like general developmental timeline.
It's a tough balance,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you want to support them but not hold them back either.
exactly. And that's where the article shifts gears a little. It's not just about, understanding why these behaviors happen. It's
Right.
about recognizing what they mean in the real world, like the actual impact.
Right, because those unspoken rules we were talking about,
Yeah.
those matter a lot in workplaces, in communities, even in romantic relationships.
Exactly. Like, take the workplace, for instance.
Okay.
Let's say you have an autistic person who maybe struggles with those social cues we talked about.
Right.
They might be amazing at their job, technically,
Yeah.
but their communication style, it could be misinterpreted by others.
Totally.
And that could really hurt their chances of moving up in their career.
That just breaks my heart to think about, someone being overlooked because of those differences.
It's tough, and it's not just work either.
Right.
The article talks about the challenges of making friends and navigating social situations, too.
Yeah, because social situations can be like minefields.
Exactly.
All those unwritten rules and expectations.
It can be really isolating for someone who processes those interactions so differently.
It makes those practical strategies that the article talks about seem even more important.
For sure.
It's not about changing who someone is.
Right.
It's about giving them the tools to navigate a world that wasn't really designed with their needs in mind.
I love how the article puts it. It doesn't say to just, explore your interests in new ways.
Yeah.
It gets into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Like, if a teenager still loves toy trains,
Okay.
maybe instead of just building tracks, they could learn about engineering or design,
Oh, that's a cool idea.
or even volunteer at a train museum,
That's awesome. You're not taking away their passion at all.
Right.
You're just kind of channeling it in a way that makes sense for where they are developmentally.
Exactly. It's about finding those connections and helping them branch out gradually.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the article also talks about teaching self-advocacy
This is
skills.
so important.
Oh, absolutely. We can all use a little help with that, right?
Right.
But especially for autistic individuals, being able to clearly say what they need and advocate for themselves, it can make such a difference.
Absolutely. It empowers them to navigate a world that doesn't always get it,
For sure. And part of that empowerment is understanding that progress isn't always linear.
Definitely.
The article really emphasizes that it's not about some overnight transformation.
Right.
It's about taking those small steps and celebrating those victories along the way.
It's a marathon, not a sprint,
Totally.
Yeah.
We have to be patient with the process, both for the individual and for ourselves.
It's a learning experience for everyone.
And this article has definitely been a learning experience for me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how it dives into those tough topics, the ones that some people might shy away from.
Like what?
Well, for example, it talks about how those age-inappropriate behaviors,
Yeah.
they can sometimes lead to misunderstandings or even worse, exploitation.
Right. And that's a really important but difficult thing to talk about.
For sure.
Because when we understand that vulnerability exists, we can do more to protect those who might be more easily taken advantage of.
Absolutely. The article is saying you can't just focus on the positive aspects.
Yeah.
You have to be real about the challenges, too, if you want to offer meaningful support.
And part of that realness is realizing that some of these behaviors, unintentionally, they might create obstacles
Yeah.
to having those fulfilling relationships we all crave.
Okay, so it's not about fixing someone.
No, not at all.
It's about helping them reach their full potential.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to those practical strategies, because those are so key here.
They're really the heart of it all.
What stood out to you the most in terms of advice that people can actually use? For me, it's that idea of meeting people where they are. Like, we can't forget about that.
Yeah.
Honoring their passions, but also, gently guiding them toward growth.
Right.
Not forcing change, but creating opportunities
Exactly.
so they can thrive.
It's like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
But you can make that water taste really good.
Okay, I like that. So we got to make that water irresistible. But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
Because the article gives some really practical advice.
It does.
I found it super helpful.
Oh, for sure. And it covers a lot of ground, from like small adjustments to more involved approaches.
Okay.
For example, remember how we were saying those repetitive behaviors can be a way to self-regulate?
Yeah.
Well, the article talks about teaching other coping skills too.
Okay.
Like mindfulness exercises or deep breathing techniques.
Oh, that's interesting.
So instead of just having one tool in their toolbox,
Right.
they've got a whole set to choose from.
I like that a lot. And we have to remember that learning these new skills, it's a process.
Absolutely.
right? It's not like flipping a switch.
Yeah.
It takes time and practice.
It really does. And that's where teamwork is so important.
Totally.
The individual, their family, the professionals, everyone working together toward that same goal.
Right, because no one can do this alone.
Exactly. And that team approach, it's especially important when it comes to navigating those tricky social situations. The article talks about role-playing social stories, even video modeling,
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
to help people understand and practice those social rules we keep talking about.
Right, those hidden rules. It's
Yeah.
like giving them a cheat sheet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like any skill, the key is repetition.
Makes sense.
The more practice they get in safe and supportive environments, the more confident they'll become in real-life situations.
It really makes you think about how much we take for granted, you know?
Yeah,
Those of us who just seem to pick up on those cues without even trying.
right.
But for someone with autism, it can be so difficult.
It can feel impossible sometimes, like trying to understand a foreign language without knowing a single word.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah,
And it highlights why having patience and understanding is so crucial.
absolutely. We have to be willing to meet them halfway,
I agree. And not just accept their differences, but celebrate them.
Exactly, because when we create a world where everyone feels seen and heard and valued for who they are,
Yeah.
that's when we all truly thrive.
You know, this whole conversation has made me rethink that phrase, age-inappropriate.
Really?
It feels so limiting, like it's all about what someone should be doing,
Yeah.
instead of just letting them be who they are.
It's true. And that's why I think this article's focus on understanding is so powerful.
I agree.
When we approach these differences with curiosity, not judgment,
Yeah.
it opens up a whole new perspective.
And isn't that what it's all about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Embracing those differences that make us human.
Well said. I think we've done it again.
We did it.
Another deep dive, another perspective shifted.
Always a pleasure diving in with you.
Likewise. To our amazing listener, remember you are not alone on this journey. Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep those conversations going. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a topic that matters.